Welcome back to Healthy Living. Depression and anxiety have prevalences in hepatitis C and are largely undetected and treated. Clinical psychologist Bradley R. Daniels speaks on anxiety and panic disorder. Bradley, thank you so much for spending time with us in studio.
Thank you, Ronald. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
A key mental concern that gets bandied, especially in the corporate environment, is something known as anxiety and panic disorder. Now, is there a difference between anxiety and panic, or is it one and the same thing?
Okay, so we first start with understanding what anxiety is, right? So anxiety, obviously, in the sort of the nuts and bolts of it, is when people are feeling excessively or feeling worried about particular things, and look at what the symptoms of the anxiety looks like. So there's a physical experience that we have of being anxious, right? So you kind of sometimes can feel a bit queasy in your stomach. You can feel like your feet are a bit cold, and those are the kinds of experiences you can have. Now, that would just be an ordinary sort of a sense of like, I'm worried about something, I'm feeling a bit anxious about something. Now, when we're talking about an anxiety disorder, that is now a sort of diagnosed mental disorder. And what makes that different to just the ordinary, I have a bit of butterflies, I'm feeling a bit worried, is that the symptoms are so severe that it interferes with the person's ability to carry on with sort of normal daily activities of living. So, for example, where the anxiety becomes so extreme that the person experiences panic attacks. Now, this notion of panic attacks is where there's an actual extreme physiological experience of feeling like loss of breath, feeling like almost people sometimes feel like they're going to have a heart attack, like that's what it feels like, what it presents to them. And it can also be with a flurry of sort of race thoughts, which makes it where the person can't exactly identify what exactly it is that they're anxious about. And then we would talk more of like a generalized anxiety disorder, where the person is having this adverse sort of like flight or fight experience without being able to pinpoint it to an actual stimulus that has caused it. And in that case, it can be quite devastating for people because it actually impacts for them to get through just a normal day, like the rest of us who are not befallen with any sort of anxiety disorder.
So would it be a psychosomatic condition that something psychologically or mentally is affecting you physiologically? And if people are not aware of it, do they end up treating the physiological signs and symptoms and negating the fact that there could be an underlying mental concern?
So I'm very careful about how we use the word psychosomatic, because psychosomatic is a very specific technical term that we use, which talks about manifestation in the body of psychological ailments or psychological distress. So what we rather just would look at, let's just look at the sort of general physical experience that people have. And I think due to the lack of awareness that people have around anxiety and anxiety disorder as a whole, and often also because of people's lack of understanding of mental health, very often people will try and treat the physiological symptoms, because that's the first thing that they usually feel comfortable with, and it's the first thing that they sort of like know about. So, for example, if the person is starting to feel like, I'm having a loss of breath, or I sometimes feel like I'm going to have a heart attack, they normally will present to a GP and say like, this is what they're experiencing. And the best solution is that if the GP is able to rule out the physiological and say, listen, actually your heart's perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with your heart, then to be able to have the conversation about, is there anything else that is causing you to feel this way? And then to make the right referral to someone like a psychologist who would be able to assist the person with working with anxiety disorder if it is so diagnosed.
What are the treatment options available to someone that has been diagnosed with anxiety disorder and experiences panic disorder very often?
Okay, so if the person has been diagnosed, it's important that the person has the correct psychological support in place with that, because that does actually require an intervention to help the person to find out what's causing the anxiety, and also for them to learn skills and tools about how to manage the anxiety. So some skills that are useful, so is for example, mindfulness is a useful tool that can be used in terms of helping the person to manage the anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also a useful intervention to help the person to understand, for example, both what the emotional causes for the anxiety, what it looks like behaviorally linked, and also in terms of what the thoughts are that causes the anxiety. So cognitive behavioral therapy has been sort of scientifically and empirically proven to be a very useful intervention to be able to help people psychologically to cope with anxiety and panic disorder. Now, with anxiety as well, it may in all likelihood, the person would also need some sort of pharmaceutical intervention as well, psychopharmaceutical intervention, which would be administered by a psychiatrist, or sometimes in milder cases by a GP, if the GP is the person that sees that. But again, we have to be careful around creating a dependence on sort of the medication, and what we would still want to do is to, with the right psychotherapeutic intervention, help the person to eventually be able to be weaned off whatever medication it is that they're taking, so it doesn't become a permanent way of living for them. So again, just to make it very clear, is that anxiety, people who suffer from anxiety, and particularly panic attacks as well, it is important that they have the correct professional support in terms of a psychologist, psychiatrist, and that's almost like there's no other way that that can be treated. But once they have the skill through the psychotherapeutic process, the recovery rate and also coping with it is that much more likely.
Bradley, thank you so much again for sharing these amazing insights with us and helping us break something that is very difficult and not often spoken about down into into a bite-sized chunk that we can digest, understand, comprehend, and begin to share and disseminate this information to our friends, family, and colleagues.
Thank you, Ronald. And I think, again, it's, as you say, that bite-sized chunks are important for people to understand the smaller parcels that make up the bigger issue. And if we continue to work with those, and also to create an awareness in our family structures, in our communities, it makes it a collective effort in trying to manage these kinds of challenges. So thank you.
Thank you for coming into the studio.
Thank you.
Depression and anxiety in patients with hepatitis C virus infection influence their health-related quality of life and adherence to antiviral treatment. However, it's now time to keep fit and healthy. Please do join us for this week's workout routine. Today's workout is not a traditional one. We always give you exercises to do, and many of you follow them and enjoy them. However, the feedback we've received from our viewers is that some people want to know, how do they ensure they do the correct technique of a few of these basic exercises? So today, I've got the wonderful Chantel with us. She's a personal trainer, she understands it, and together we've unpacked the top 5 exercises that we're going to help educate you on to ensure you do it in the correct technique and don't injure yourself, but maximize the body's results. Chantel, are you ready? Now, as we know, right, many people want to focus on the lower body. And the first exercise many people think of when you come to the lower body is the squat. Now, the squat is a wonderful exercise to strengthen the legs, shape and tone that area, burn some cellulite. However, the technique that many people use is incorrect. So Chantel will show us the incorrect version of doing a traditional squat exercise. As you notice with this exercise, she's off balance, her knees are extending beyond her toes, and she's putting a lot of pressure on her knees rather than on the leg muscles that she should be exercising. So this is a very dangerous exercise to do. So, the correct version, Chantel, right? Feet wider than shoulder width apart. So we anchor ourselves down. We angle our toes outwards ever so slightly so we don't put too much pressure on our patella or kneecap. Back upright, and you imagine you're sitting on a chair. All right? So sit backwards on the chair. And as you notice, Chantel is not dropping below 90 degrees. And that's a wonderful thing because a lot of pressure gets taken up by the thigh muscle, by the hamstring, and of course the glute. And that's what you want to do. And up you come. And you'll notice as she does the exercise, keep on going, she pauses for a split second at the bottom and up she goes again. She controls the speed of the exercise, which is critically important to ensure that gravity and momentum don't take over. With a squat, you can aim to do 20 to 30 repetitions as part of this sequence and repeat each exercise in the correct technique and the correct manner for at least 3 sets. All right, great. Second leg exercise. Now many ladies say, Ronald, how do I build up my derriere? How do I get my stutler firm and tight? And the thing is, you need to isolate that muscle to the best of your ability. The glute is the biggest muscle group in the body, and we're going to do the lunge exercise. But people do it again with the incorrect technique and risk injuring themselves. Chantel, what's the incorrect technique for the lunge? All right, that's a version I've never seen before. That's why it's incorrect. And as you'll notice with this exercise, she's overextending the knee again onto the toes, so there's no impact on the muscle groups you want to target, which is, of course, the thigh and the glutes. Up you come again. One more time. No effect on this exercise, okay? And you're risking injuring your knee, and that is a very dangerous thing to do and highly expensive when it comes to rehabilitation. So the correct technique for the lunge is take a step forward, hands on the hips to control your center of gravity and balance. You have a 90-degree bend in the knee's not extended over the toes, and there's a wonderful 90-degree bend in the back of the leg. Up you come. Slow and controlled manner. Keep on going. Back and posture is upright, her core is engaged. Beautiful technique, textbook technique with this exercise. You should aim to do about 15 repetitions on each leg. All right, I'm impressed. Right technique, right muscle groups, brilliant exercise. Another exercise that many people do incorrectly is when it comes to the upper body and the biceps. So what I've got over here is I've got a resistance tube with handles. Having fitness equipment doesn't have to be too expensive. This is very cheap to buy at any sports store. So we're going to be doing bicep curls. Now this is for the gents and for the ladies. You want to build up those guns. So the incorrect technique with this is going to be demonstrated right now. Whoa! All right, I think she's going to get whiplash with this. As you'll notice, I don't know which muscles are working, but it's definitely not the biceps because she's swinging the arms up and down. There's no consistent bend and relaxation with the elbow. And of course, she's swinging back and there's no stability with this exercise. So you are only working everything else but the bicep muscle. So the correct technique will be as follows. Anchor down on the resistance tube. Hands are in front of you. Tuck the elbows into your side. Engage your core. Keep this tight. Bend up. Hands come to shoulders and slowly elongate it all the way down because you want to work the entire bicep muscle, the bicep head. And by doing it at a slow, controlled pace, you begin to isolate the muscle groups that you want to work. You do this exercise for 20 repetitions. If the resistance band or resistance tube is too light, then what you could do is offer more tension and tautness by bending the knees and making it even tighter around your foot. All right? Good. That's amazing. We're going to take these 9mm to shotguns, man. Building up on those guns, all right? The next exercise is, of course, thumb cover. Now, when we were in school doing physical education or physical training classes, the crunch was the most common exercise we used to do, or the ab crunch. And many people still do it today, but they do it with the incorrect technique. Chantel, please show us the ab crunch incorrect technique. As you can see there, okay, her hands are too tight against the head. She's rolling up on her neck. She's not engaging the abs, but she's working gravity and momentum. That'll get the six-pack, not around the abdominal region here. So the correct technique is done twofold. One is, if you're not strong enough and your abs are not strong enough, what you need to do is have someone anchor your feet down, or you place it under a couch or a bed. So they could hold it down over there. Now Chantal will place her hands on her earlobes, come up, hold it there. That's engaging the core. So it's a small, controlled range of motion. And I can actually see her shaking, which means the core is working as well. That's it. And you're aiming to do 20 repetitions of this exercise. Good. Hala, last six-pack, here we come. The last exercise for today is cooling the body down and stretching. Stretching is so important for every workout. So the hamstring stretch. Many people do the traditional stretch where their feet are shoulder width apart and they just hang forward. So what you're doing with this exercise is this, you're not hinging on the hips, you're rounding your back. So when you round your back, you eliminate the effect on the hamstring muscles or the back of the legs. And this is really not good because many people tend to bounce at the bottom. And when you bounce, okay, you're creating a contraction and a relaxation of that hamstring muscle and you risk tearing it or pulling it. Very dangerous, especially if you're not flexible enough. So a variation of this exercise, and what we prefer from a technique perspective to minimize injury and maximize efficiency is as follows. Place the left foot forward, the right foot is slightly bent. The left foot is forward and the left knee is straight. Don't angle your hips backwards, keep your hips square. All right, so they're square, not angled. And all I want you to do is take your hips backwards and try to let your chest go down towards your foot. So as you can see, Chantal's back is straight, okay? She's quite flexible, so she can go quite far down. The effect is on the entire hamstring area, and there's different muscles to the hamstring. You hold that stretch for 30 seconds because you activate the proprioceptors, which allows the body to release relaxin and relax the muscles further, which is more efficient for that stretch. Change legs. Brilliant technique. Efficient, effective, and the entire family can do this exercise. All right, thank you, Chantal. Up you come. That's how simple it is to fix your errors when it comes to exercising. If you are exercising, and I hope that you are, be consistent with it, but make sure that you're doing it with the right technique, because you don't want to get injured, but you want to get the body results. Summer bodies are made in the winter, and now is the time to get going. So try these exercises out and share with us how it makes you feel and how your body is changing for the better. That's all we have for you on today's show. Thanks for watching Healthy Living on Afro Worldview. From me, Ronald Avergy, and the team, keep warm and healthy. Cheers.